Hello, I am C3PO, and I believe the storyteller is ready. So let us begin.
This week, the story is about a book, and one that doesn't tell a singular story like most of us expected. It continues to pad an ever-growing epic we could justify nicknaming the Mandoverse. Now, a couple of weeks beyond the finale of the Book of Boba Fett season 1, or maybe the series, I guess we'll find out, felt like a lot of people considered it to be a mixed bag overall. Definitely had highlights, though, and we're going to go over some of those by counting down our top 6 favorite things about this season of TV. So, Ross, what are your lasting feelings about the Boba show now that you've had a couple of weeks to reflect? How do you feel about it overall?
Overall, I was pleased with it, and it was enjoyable, and there were certain episodes that I think are going to be extremely rewatchable. So as an overall, I can't complain with what we got. I am completely surprised with what we got compared to what I thought we were getting, and what I guess we were kind of I believe we were led to believe. There was some subtle murmurs about Mando season 2.5, but that I think should have been extremely, I think that should have just been straight up discussed in the promotional material to, or maybe name the show something different. So overall, I don't think I'm going to look back on the collective Book of Boba Fett, if this is all we get, as one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars by any means. But when it comes to Star Wars, I like all of it. And the only reason it wouldn't be is because it feels extremely disjointed and doesn't feel like its own thing more than anything. It feels very kind of episodic in the way that you would look at the Clone Wars, and it being difficult to evaluate an overall view of the Clone Wars because there are parts of it you love, parts of it maybe you don't like. Whereas I found that even in Mando, there's consistency within the 2 seasons, even within the 1 season. There was consistency to view it with a singular lens. I can't view Book of Boba Fett with a singular lens. And so that's why I would say maybe put it on a lower level of my Star Wars things. But in going over all the things I loved, there are so many. And so I still am very pleased with what we got.
Can we expect this from other non-Skywalker Star Wars storytelling going forward, for all of this bleeding of other characters in? Like, obviously it's okay to meld the worlds, but to this degree, does Star Wars rely too heavily on a singular hero, who in this case I'm referring to Din the Mandalorian? Like, does it too desperately need to cling to one story in order to do these side stories?
We are, I think, just dipping our toes into the water of, oh my God, this is poorly named. Oh my God, I think this is what everything is going to be. And to be honest, I think what you just said is extremely spot on. The Mandalorian, I think, will continue to be less and less about just Din Djarin, although he'll be the main character. I mean, Grogu was immediately introduced in the first episode. And so then I love the viewpoint of Grogu actually being the titular character in a way. But that's not what they were going for, I don't believe, when they named that show in the even smallest fragment. But no, I don't believe, I think that's something that evolved. I think Grogu's foundling nature, I think, because there's so much of the Mandalorian culture that they've changed through the Mandalorian that would not be the original seed for the idea. The seed is simply Boba Fett finds a baby Yoda and it changes him. That's the
right.
seed.
But so doesn't that indicate that it was always going to be a this like love story about a little baby Yoda? Like,
but I don't necessarily think that the story was supposed to be about this potential baby Yoda being the heir to Mandalore, though.
I see. Yes.
Where that Din and Grogu are now essentially, like, they have the Darksaber, they have the right to lay claim to the planet Mandalore, literally already. And
in
so
16 episodes, they pulled that off.
Exactly. And so that right there goes to show that the show, I don't think that it was intending to necessarily go this way when it was conceptualized. And I'm okay with that. I think that's similar to what we're getting with the rest of things. I think Andor will not just be about Cassian Andor. I think it's going to be something whereas he'll be the main character, but there will be other characters that get a decent amount of screen time. And I think way, way, way more so, Ahsoka is shaping up to be a Rebels sequel. And Ahsoka was a character in Rebels, but Ahsoka was not one of the main characters in Rebels, the way she was the main character in the Clone Wars. But she's going to be a main character in this show. And she's probably going to be the main character, but it's shaping up to be a show that has an ensemble of potentially 5 main characters. And a show called Ahsoka, you wouldn't necessarily think that, a la Book of Boba Fett, and Boba Fett just being kind of one of the many in this.
Right, but Obi-Wan Kenobi and to an extent also Ahsoka have the benefit of being a part of the Skywalker saga now. Like they directly dip their toes in that very comfortable pool where Star Wars doesn't feel like it's experimenting.
And I think that's what gets them away with a little bit easier than this, being able to call themselves something like Ahsoka or Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think, will get away with it more so than anything because the main other characters are all Skywalkers, likely. Not necessarily the main characters that we'll see on screen, but likely the ones influencing the plot, whether it's Luke protection or if Leia's involved, but we know Anakin's going to be involved. Those things are going to influence it. So you can kind of get away with it being, and I think it's going to be a very Obi-Wan centric show, and it's going to be short, so they can't really pull off having a 2-episode detour about Din Djarin in the same way that they did in this. But then again, 7 episodes, if that's all the Book of Boba Fett is, did it really get away with pulling off its 2-episode swerve? No, it didn't get away with it in the eyes of most people. It was extremely enjoyable, but it just didn't make a ton of sense.
It is apt, I think, in this episode of the podcast where we're going to celebrate the Book of Boba Fett that we're in the preamble just talking about Din Djarin and Skywalkers. We're just talking about other characters other than Boba Fett. We will talk about him some more in the next hour. I'm going to start with my number 6 favorite thing about this season of TV. And I think it's Chrysanthemum, who you'll remember I had no frame of reference for. This guy is brand new to me. He was a canonical character pre-existing, but like brand new to me. And I just can't believe it's taken this long for them to introduce a new Wookiee character into the mainstream. With Chrysanthemum, I think we have an opportunity to do what we could never do with Chewie, which is actually be brutal. Like you've got so much sentimentality stocked up in this character of Chewie that frankly, his nature was kind of neutered for the audience. And he is quite literally just like a dog, a teddy bear. And when you see him almost get blown out of the sky in episode 9, your heart hurts. And that's not going to happen. Like I kind of thought that Chrysanthemum maybe got killed in the big street battle in the Boba Fett finale. And I wasn't heartbroken. And actually, I'm thrilled that he's back so that can continue. I've got no stock built up in him, but he's just a damn badass.
Yeah, that's a great choice. Huge honorable mention for me. His presence, his introduction, the back to tank fight, but most of all, his incredibly ridiculous survival rate. It doesn't make sense. Every time they flash to him, he's like, oh, well, there's the end of the number of nicknames he's developed as well. Santo, Santi, BK, I've heard a lot of people refer to him as, which also totally works. I think Santi is his oldest nickname, but yeah, Black Chrysanthemum has made his way from comic to big screen in a really cool way, and it was subtle the way it was done, kind of alongside the twins, and then having him like, is that going to be all of them? But then he's able to kind of come back, and it's just this character who you aren't necessarily expecting to come back and consistently comes back, and even at the end you're just not expecting him to die. I would love it if that becomes kind of the recurring thing with Black Chrysanthemum, whereas you expect him to consistently die, or he just appears out of nowhere consistently. Like I'm okay with that being a shtick for a character, where it's just okay, Black Chrysanthemum is somehow consistently living through everything, but they need to add scars to him. He's already scarred up. Add some more. I want to see some big scars because he likely got a few in that role.
Well, that plays exactly into what I'm trying to celebrate about this guy, because it's a show that I've often said I don't feel too emotionally attached to, although there were emotional moments in the show. Like one of the good things about Boba Fett for me was that it was actually kind of like a free pass for a show to not be precious and perfect. And Black Chrysanthemum's a perfect symbol of that because, like, I think one of the things I like about him is that I don't care about him. Yeah, beat the shit out of him. He just looks good. And so that made for fun entertainment for me. Why do they call him Black Chrysanthemum? Is it like, is there a brown chrysanthemum?
I have no idea.
Right.
Maybe he's one of like, I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe black
sounds tough.
Yeah, or maybe it's a rarer Wookiee pelt tone, and that like I have no idea why that's his name. But yeah, it's likely due to the fact that it's more ominous than a singular chrysanthemum or Chewbacca.
Right. What is your number 6?
My number 6 is probably one that when you first heard about this show, you wouldn't expect to put at your number 6. You would maybe expect to put a little bit higher, but I think is an appropriate place for it. And it's actually seeing Boba inside the Sarlacc.
Cool.
And so that would be seeing the like this gaseous environment around him, and the stormtrooper that's slightly decaying and needing to hook up to his oxygen, and then bursting through the sand. It overall, it was extremely satisfying. It got the internet very excited about the similarities to the Patton Oswalt description of what would happen. It's exactly what you would expect to happen. There's nothing remarkable about it, but it's still remarkable to finally see inside Schrodinger's box. And so you actually are fine, like, and that's what it's commonly been referred to as that, like in terms of his return when canon was created again in the Disney purchase. Boba very much became Schrodinger's cat, and it's a matter of he can be dead or alive, and that's the great part, because he was in Legends, but he in film canon he is dead. And so it's really fun to actually get that sneak peek on something that has existed since 1983 in a lot of people's minds, because a lot of people, including me, didn't really care too much about Legends when it was the expanded universe. So
right. I think that's so true. I think that Star Wars wants to be very tempered in its decision to retcon character deaths, because they have done it a couple of times now. But at the same time, I don't know, there's been some, they seem to do it only when the character is just too badass not to welcome back into the fold. And obviously the other example is Darth Maul. And so, yeah, if the fans want it and we've already kind of like concocted how it's going to happen, why not satisfy everybody with showing it? Because I mean, it was a lousy thing to do to this character who had like great promise, and they had built this other backstory involving the Clone Wars that he ultimately deserves a swan song. And so, yeah, I think that's really cool. Just the design of it is really amazing too, and the melting of the stormtrooper is a nice touch, and it kind of lends a whole new context to exactly what was meant when 3PO said you're going to be digested over, however many centuries or whatever.
Yeah, you will find a new definition of pain and suffering or something. And so,
Right.
yeah, it is pretty darn gross, but pretty satisfying to see.
Although a quick dip in the bacta tank is all that it really takes to
I don't know. It looked like it was several weeks of recurring back to therapy.
Yeah, you're right.
Actually, after several years of being a Tusken too. So that probably doesn't help.
My number 5 is another Return of the Jedi beast. It's all the Rancor stuff in the Book of Boba Fett. This whole series is predicated on fan service. That's just a fact. And I think that's a dangerous medium to traffic in exclusively. Because if you're only doing stuff to satisfy the fans who you already have, you might be getting away from telling a good or important story. But I think the Rancors are the perfect temperament of fan service, because it really only is there to serve the effort to feel more like a very specific era and ilk of Star Wars that we would love to rediscover, which is Tatooine, circa just after Return of the Jedi. The Hutts didn't really work for me in this show, the twins, but I don't know, the Rancor was really fun. Plus, we've talked a lot about how Star Wars should get back to its creature of the Black Lagoon milieu. It can be a monster movie involving a Black Lagoon thing with the Rancor. It can also be a Godzilla movie with the Rancor. So it kind of gets to be both kinds of monster movie in this series alone. And so I loved it.
Yeah, I was really glad you put this in because it was another one of my honorable mentions. And it's crazy that the Rancor was, but you also get Danny Trejo as well. And the sequence of Grogu taming the Rancor and calming him down and then taking a little nap next to him. Just everything. And also Din failing miserably when fighting the Rancor. It was used really well. Boba, you kind of forget a little bit about it when Boba leaves. I mean, it makes sense that like, oh, Boba arrives with the Rancor and you're able to piece it together, but they do leave it off in the background long enough that it's able to kind of digest a little bit and then be a bit of a nice surprise when it's returned, even if you are expecting it, especially the obvious, I want to ride it. And that being like the one major leak from Book of Boba Fett that he rides a Rancor. But overall, it was really cool to see the destruction capabilities they had. They didn't need to have a new Rancor delivered. They could have, because Jabba had multiple.
Okay.
But under that premise, most people wouldn't know that. And so that's why they needed to have a new one. But then again, I thought there was a huge, huge waste of Danny Trejo. It was a missed opportunity to not cut back in episodes 5 or 6 at some point to do a 3-minute scene where Danny Trejo is teaching Boba Fett how, like, just a little bit of dog training with the Rancor, and it's a fun little scene. And I think that would have given it a little extra push. But I know why they didn't, so that people would forget about it.
I think that they can bring Trejo back if anyone in the Mandoverse needs a like Tatooine-based zoologist. If anybody needs to like ask a guy about a creature, yeah, call up Danny Trejo and have him be that person.
Great thinking. That's an absolutely perfect way to bring him back. And let's face it, Tatooine has a lot of creatures that they could come calling about.
That's right. Number 5 on your list.
Number 5 on my list would be the, albeit maybe too early, still wonderful to see reunion of Din and Grogu.
Yeah.
And this just the cute little moment of Grogu jumping into his arms, the reveal of Peli just being her absolute at her funniest on this like great rickshaw droid, another great callback to Attack the Clones. And so they do the reveal there, and it's just like Din is so surprised and caught off guard. It's just such a wonderful, wholesome moment, and it was maybe a little too early in that it's not even occurring in The Mandalorian, but it was a really nice way for the two of them to make their reunion. So that makes my number 5.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Filoni or Favreau or what it is, but these guys do not seem to have any interest in forcing us to wait for anything. Like they want to give us their their payoff as soon as possible. And that probably is robbing something from the story. But I guess if you're going to bring Din back, it's very hard not to bring Grogu back because that's kind of what his whole world revolves around. And so regardless, it's what we all showed up for. It's what we were missing for those first 3 or 4 episodes of Boba Fett. And so great. And maybe they have another idea for the next chapter of the Din and Grogu Chronicles. You know, they might just be like, well, let's just get the show on the road because we got another story we want to tell.
Yeah, it could be really about focusing on Din's journey with the Darksaber as well, a little bit, because we don't necessarily get to see his growth away from Grogu so much, but we do get to see his growth in letting go of Grogu. Grogu made the decision to come back to him. He made the decision that, okay, I won't see Grogu. I'll let Ahsoka also deliver the package as well. And so, like, overall, I thought it was executed well, but was maybe too quick for the audience. And also the Scorpionic droids chasing him in the background was a great touch.
What I'll say about suspense in terms of Grogu's growth, I am never concerned that a Rancor is going to hurt Grogu. I'm never concerned that Moff Gideon is going to hurt Grogu. Like, it's well established. This kid is powerful. He's more powerful than anything else. And so I'm worried, I guess, that it's going to hurt if and when Mando is mortally wounded near Grogu. That's going to suck, but that's coming down the road, and it's certainly not going to happen in the Book of Boba Fett. I'm not worried about Grogu, but what was nerve-wracking was maybe he would choose not to be with Mando. and they didn't do that. And very quickly they didn't do that.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense for him to choose the life of the Jedi. He's so, yeah.
But he did leave. He did leave, and it hurt your feelings, and you felt emotional about it once, but they didn't make you sit in that for very long.
Yeah, and which is also nice to know that that's what Grogu chose as well.
Yeah, that's right. My number 4 is Mando getting a new ship. I love the Razor Crest.
It's my number 4 too.
Oh, great. Good. It's kind of like Din. The Razor Crest is kind of like Din driving like a cube van. You're like, I see why you need this. It's a cool looking ship. And it was cool when it got blown up. But
it was
the N1 is like a sports car. And the whole greased lightning sequence where he rebuilds it gives us an opportunity to, as you kind of mentioned a second ago, to warm up to Peli a little bit more. They install that little co-pilot's bubble for Grogu, which is just so perfect. It's a great poster now, the two of them with their little heads in the windows flying through space in a space Corvette. I was always a fan of the N1, that it now kind of has a more rugged appeal. It's perfect for Mando. I think it's good. I'm really glad that they've traded it in for a new whip.
Yeah, it's like a little Jetsons Miata. It's just flying through the sky, and the Grogu being in that little bubble, it is so perfect Star Wars. It's so 80s in its design. It's amazing that they're able to take the N1 and they're putting it in the original trilogy time era, and they're making it look like an original trilogy ship, but it is not. It is from the prequels, and it was like crapped on by a lot of people. But no, it's cool, hand sculpted design, has an actual impact to the storyline as to why Din likes it, because it means it's pre-Empire, and it shows that it's like it's got the ability to put in these customizations because it's not a mass built design, and it has a what's it called, a hyperdrive, without having to use a hyper ring, and like just a bunch of like all these logical things as to, yeah, that is exactly the ship in all of the ships that Din could pick that makes the most sense. It's the perfect fit for him in this use case. And also, he no longer needs the baggage of the Razor Crest because he's not a bounty hunter anymore.
True.
So it's not what he is. And we saw him bounty hunting in his kind of return at the start of in this season. But he's not the same kind of bounty hunter, and I don't foresee him going back to that in The Mandalorian now that he's reunited with Grogu. And this, like the jetted out engine, it's just overall everything about it was executed so well.
Did people crap on it in the prequel era because it was yellow, because the edges were curvy?
Yeah, it was different. It was too. I don't know if people said this, but people probably said it was too Jetsons-y. It's too cartoonish. It's not rugged the way an X-wing is, with these like fold out wings, and it looks very but that's the thing. People didn't like the prequels because they were so different, and the lived-in galaxy vibe and the grays of the Empire. Those things logically, like, they weren't as thought through. But then again, it was also the first movie in a trilogy, so you're not able to see the progression from this beautiful galaxy into the Empire that you see as episode, like towards the end of Revenge of the Sith. One of my favorite parts about that movie is the way it progresses into the start of this grayed out Imperial Empire.
Well, and fans had never seen Naboo before, which is very fixated on aesthetic and things looking beautiful. Man, I would really love to see them return to Naboo. It seemed so significant so long ago. I don't know if we'll get an opportunity to go there in Obi-Wan Kenobi. Padme's not alive anymore, but there is still a line to draw between Anakin and Naboo as his past. I think they need to resurrect those old sets.
I think you're like, once again, I still think it's the ripest area of Star Wars to tell us a story in terms of what we want to know is young Palpatine, and young Palpatine is going to take place a lot on Naboo. And so I think that's a prime opportunity. But you're right. I think there's if we're going, and we are very likely going off world in Kenobi, I think that makes a lot of sense to maybe choose a place like Naboo, or maybe we'll see it in Andor. But I think it needs to make its return. And also, it was great to see the N1 go through Beggar's Canyon. also.
Oh yes, that was the pod race
Yeah, and
location.
then like the Bunta Eve arena area, and then going up, flying over the Womp Rats and whatnot. It was
Well, it was cool to
really
see it
cool.
like fly alongside X-wings too, because there's
Yeah.
even though they're incredibly different, there is a commonality in them being like single cockpit
Starfighters
that a Skywalker flew. You know.
Oh yeah, that's true. Good point. Oh, I didn't really think about it that way as little Annie versus, and then of course the spinning, which was cool trick.
Right. Yeah, spinning is a cool trick. My third favorite thing about the Book of Boba Fett was the return of Cobb Vanth. Not that he has a ton of screen time. He has very little, and some of it he kind of gets dummied. I think I could be swayed to put Cobb Vanth in a top 6 list of my favorite post Disney characters. I know that they didn't invent the character, but like
it's
in
still
live
a post
action,
Disney character.
Well, it is okay. He does realistically require a lot more development, and I think that we'll get that. I'm just I'm very rarely this confident in a character / actor's fit for the universe and the role. It's a Han Solo thing for me. There are like 5 people in the world who have that specific brand of charisma, and Timothy Olyphant is one of them. So I'm really glad this character is alive. I can't wait for him to be implemented more. I love that they are just being really genre overt with the meta casting of Timothy Olyphant. And in Book of Boba Fett, they did that like even more heavy-handedly. This guy is one of the coolest people on the planet, and I loved seeing him again.
Another one of my honorable mentions. Great that you mentioned him. Yeah, this was just so cool. The scene with the Pikes where he tips over the spice, and it's just like it's so sheriff, and it's great to see the character. He's executed so well. I definitely want to do a top 6 and 6 now, characters, Disney era. So yeah. I think that's one that we need to do. That sounds like a fun 6 and 6. Sure. But Cobb Vanth is awesome. He does have that swagger that is incredibly, like, it's a charisma that you can't put your finger on. And the fact that they were able to get that in Star Wars for a character like Cobb Vanth, that elevates him so that, yeah, he's got this cool origin story that he comes from books. But even the people that don't know about that love him because he's so insanely charismatic on screen in his tiny frames that he gets, and the fact that he's going to live. And what's his fate going to be? Is he going to be a bit of a mod now as well? It looks like he's going to be modded out in some way, I guess. Yeah. Is he going to have a robot arm maybe, or like just a metal plated shoulder or something? That seemed to be where he was shot. Maybe he got shot in the heart. I don't remember where he got shot, but it looked like the upper body. Overall, it just leads more of, okay, what's next in his story? I want to see more Freetown. Maybe he is going to be broadened out. If they resurrect Rangers of the New Republic, maybe he'll get a role in that to be kind of the sheriff of all of Tatooine. Maybe he goes flying around on some in atmosphere cruiser and flies to different parts of Tatooine and settles difficult challenges and does sheriff activities.
2 things can't be true. He can't be the sheriff of all of Tatooine, and we're okay with there being a crime lord of Tatooine who's like kind of a hero, because it's okay to celebrate that Boba Fett has like kind of gray principles, because that's implicit to Boba Fett. It's also implicit to Tatooine, and there's no one being victimized by this. But like Cobb Vanth is very specifically virtuous. Like this is like a good guy through and through in like the most justified sense. But so I don't think that he could stand for there being crime under his thumb. But there could be an interesting political story to tell about how he reckons with some of the shady stuff that happens on his watch.
I think that's actually a really cool way, is to do a political, like, to not make it so much about the sheriff nature of it, but do it as like an old west, like a Western political like thriller on Tatooine in some way. But the way I actually more so thought of it was if Boba were to abdicate his daimyo role, as he kind of indicated it wasn't necessarily cut out for. Black Chrysanthemum sure as shit isn't, but Cobb Vanth is. And we do cut to Cobb Vanth later. Like, I mean, we go to Din Djarin right after, and then we go to Cobb in in the post-credit scene. But I don't know, that's someone who's far more fit to be the leader of all of Tatooine.
But he's not going to negotiate with gangsters, Cobb Vanth.
My point is, like, there's no spice. There's no,
right.
Like, Boba Fett cleaned up Tatooine, or
Sure.
Mos Espa, at least, not Mos Eisley, but Mos Espa. And so maybe that's what Cobb Vanth's mission is. Maybe it's like, okay, these regions are good, but Mos Eisley is the main port of scum and villainy on my planet, and spice will continue to flow through there, and it will make its way to Freetown or something.
What is your number 3?
My number 3 is the deceptive alternative title, From the Desert Comes a Stranger.
Nice one.
It was not Cobb Vanth that was the one that got me out of my seat. It was the end of the episode when a more familiar stranger came to picture, and that was the return of Cad Bane. And seeing that silhouette from a distance, the incredible hat, and just the amazing execution in live action. His return was just extremely badass. I picked this moment over the shit talking that he does later against Boba Fett, but it was extremely cool to see him return. Even in his old age, he's quicker than Cobb Vanth and his deputy. And the live action representation, Corey Burton doing the slightly aged version of his voice, but keeping it as consistent as ever. Cad Bane is such a badass and is one of my favorite cartoon to screen depictions yet. I mean, and I know there's only been a few, but I think this might be the best execution that we could have ever possibly hoped for a character that is a character of consequence if you spent time in the Clone Wars era. So it's also good to know that he's lived this much longer and that we have the potential for a lot more live action Cad Bane prior to this point.
There is potential for it, and I guess there's groundwork laid for that now for the more casual fan. As I said, it's just a bit of a shame that they didn't do more in this show to establish who he was. Like, even when he arrived and you could see the hat as a silhouette, and then they showed that he had blue face and red eyes, it's almost like, oh, well, now you get it. Now everyone watching the Book of Boba Fett totally understands what we were teasing, when the fact is only 10% of them did. And so I think that's just like bad writing in the tease for him. That said, the execution of him being there was super cool. And even as somebody who doesn't have a relationship to the character, I just thought he was really awesome. I don't have a whole lot to say about him canonically, but like I like that he was genuinely scary. And again, I love that they just leaned right into the genre.
Yeah, I think everything about it was perfect in the reveal. I think if you had done that in an earlier episode, I don't think it needs to be that late. I don't think there's any reason for that entire sequence. You have Cobb Vanth come in earlier. Just do it all earlier, and you're laying the framework. And then it's something where it's like, oh, you're not in this position where you're feeling, okay, I should know more about this guy because it's like episode 3, and you're like, ooh, okay, it's episode 3. I'm gonna learn more about this guy, as opposed to it's episode 6. Okay, is this the real bad guy? And we're now going into the I totally agree on that. And that's where this is a bias list that shows through on my end, because that's a moment that works for me, but I totally get isn't going to work on the same level by any means for a lot of other people. And that's why it's really great to see something like Black Chrysanthemum on your list, because and not even on my list, because that was a moment where as soon as I saw him, I was like, it's Black Chrysanthemum. But I also don't have necessarily strong ties to Black Chrysanthemum stories. And so I was much more excited to see someone like Cad Bane, who is I'm a big fan of.
And so to be clear, your number 3 is Cad Bane. It's not the title From the Desert Comes a Stranger.
It's both. It's okay. It's the use of that title in the way that they're able to make that a moment. And the moment is so cool in the way it's executed. So it's the use of the moment. That's what I wrote. The moment from a desert comes a stranger.
Well, and also we talked about just like the multiple meanings that there's potential for within the phrasing of "From the Desert Comes a Stranger." It's just like first of all, it's just like a very handsome phrase, and then also it has a lot of application to Star Wars in a broader sense. So it's really nicely titled.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that you mentioned like all of Star Wars could be called "From the Desert Comes a Stranger," and it's true. It would make for, if you were to rewrite, if Star Wars were to come out as a book now, that's what it would be. That's probably what it would be called. Star Wars: From the Desert Comes a Stranger.
It's really good. It's very good. My number 2 is the Luke deep fake.
Nice.
Can I continue?
Yeah, sure.
The only reason this isn't my number 1 is because I just feel like I have to maintain a certain arm's length of reticence about like the ethics of using this technology in films and TV in general. Like it's so conceptually eerie that I just have to keep it kind of in a number 2 slot. It's a visual miracle that they're able to pull it off to this effect, and to invite fans into their own past so immersively and so convincingly is beautiful. It's kind of the essence of Star Wars, fantasy storytelling in general, certainly fan service, if we're allowing that dirty word. And they did a more amazing job here than we've ever seen it. And that whole penultimate episode of the season was a wonder, in no small part thanks to Luke Skywalker having been recreated from ones and zeros, from the ground up, from nothing. It's amazing that we live in this time.
Yeah, the fact that Mark Hamill didn't return, it's all just generated through past work and his face. And it is like, yes, somebody was a stand-in, but it is remarkable that we're this much further along than we were just a couple of years ago. And it is so much better. And it makes me so pleased to see, because it allows you to be more immersed. And I know there is still the uncanny valley for some people. And I guess kind of the first time you watch it, you're like, oh my God, how is this even happening? But the rewatchability of this is so much higher than the rewatchability of moments, even the final moments at the end of Mando season 2. Like I almost prefer to I would love a cut of that episode with Shamook's ending, the YouTuber who they hired to make a Luke, because it's able to give you kind of that immersion where you're not taken away from it for a quick second, or just for fuck's sakes, I don't know how many times I've said this. Please, dear God, Lucasfilm and Disney, change Rogue One. You don't need, I don't need you to fix Peter Cushing. Sure, while you're in there tinkering, do what you want. I think he looked pretty damn good. But you have 1.5 seconds of a really, really shitty Carrie Fisher, Leia, weird, deep. It looks bad. And it has aged really poorly.
And then it looks worse over time. Yeah.
It looks really bad. And then you have something like this in Book of Boba Fett, or even what we saw in The Rise of Skywalker. And it gets you so excited about, it gets you a little worried about the potential of what they could do, but it also gets you really excited at the same time, because it's able to give you episodes like this that just completely blow your socks off.
Where do you come down on the ethics of this? Obviously, they probably have Mark Hamill's blessing, although they don't need it because they own Luke Skywalker. But like, what do you think about them making a new movie that sort of stars James Dean?
Well, it is something that I think they would likely need Mark Hamill's blessing for use of his face that is not Star Wars. So I think they're using probably
it's Star Wars. It's owned by Lucasfilm.
No, but my guess is they're using source Mark Hamill from the 80s that is not Star Wars. That's just my guess.
Maybe
like they have a lot of Mark Hamill, but they don't have as much as maybe they could. Now the apparently the radio dramas of the Star Wars, which I adore, the original trilogy. Mark Hamill does the voice in
that helps.
I think 2 of them, maybe 3 of them. I think just 2 of them. But he does it in A New Hope and Empire, and those are way longer. Return of the Jedi is like maybe 5 minutes longer than the actual movie, whereas I think A New Hope is like 6 hours or 5.5 hours.
Awesome.
But you have so much Luke Skywalker talking from the 70s and 80s and talking in the galaxy far, far away and saying lines in like different cadences than maybe you're used to. And so it's just like that right there is a huge source bank that they're pulling from. But in terms of the ethics of it all, I have no idea. I really feel like having the person's permission means, yeah, go for it, 100%. But someone who's passed away, I think someone like Peter Cushing, it's a little less weird because he was cool. He gave his blessing in his lifetime to be Grand Moff Tarkin. Right. He had agreed to be Grand Moff Tarkin, and so his estate is able to, I believe, make probably a fair assessment as to what his wishes would be. He agreed to be this character, and maybe he, like, unless he vocally despised it, which is not the case, then it makes sense that his estate would be like, yeah, sure, we're okay with this. But in the case of like James Dean being, his face being used in movies nowadays, where he would have no involvement in whatsoever.
He didn't sign on to be like the lead in Two Rebel, Two Cause, or some like other movie that had nothing to do with him.
Exactly. And what is he playing? Is he like, are they going to cast him in a role that he doesn't agree with? Maybe there's something controversial about the character, and like it opens a whole can of worms that isn't fair to using that person's face in terms of the rights of it. So I think that's where the kind of the line should be maybe drawn, is the person, if they didn't agree to be deep faked to like all hell in their life, like signed a contract into their estate and like, hey, get me as much work as I can after I die so that it's great for the estate. Like, put me in everything. If they don't have that, then I think you should go based off of, oh, Carrie Fisher, okay, you're putting her daughter in her place, and for a couple seconds in a movie to be Leia and a character that she loved, do it. Someone who's agreed to be that character, that's different. But I think it's a different can of worms if they have no idea about the role they're playing.
We have done enough episodes of this podcast that we could be deep faked if anybody.
Our voices.
Cares. Yeah, our voices for sure. I don't know. We're also on video here on YouTube.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Maybe glasses will ruin it, so I'll have like a weird half glasses outline. Ooh.
What is your number two?
My number two, so I went a little bit more granular than you, as we generally do when we do the highlights. And I went with the Luke and Grogu backpack montage and training sequence. Nice. So the fact that it is the same backpack, some incredible Star Wars fans did the side-by-sides to determine that it is the same backpack he used with Yoda. And just the fact that you got Grogu standing on one foot, Luke carrying him with the Force. That was a really cute little sequence when they're having their conversation about Yoda. And then he touches him and they do the Order 66 flashback. And then he puts him in his back and like they climb a tree together. And it's a wonderful callback to everything original trilogy that I just love. The Dagobah sequences between Luke and Yoda are my favorite things in Star Wars. And I love Grogu. And he's just the lifeblood of new Star Wars these days. And the return of Luke Skywalker in this new cool way. And the fact that you have him doing him up to his same old tricks, but moving at this incredible speed. So it's a technological feat. The fact that he's swinging a saber and hop skipping in a jump, and it's not just my head is slightly tilted down and I'm going to reveal my face and stand in one spot and like you're just deep faking that. No, you're absolutely recreating an active Mark Hamill with this $6 million robot in his backpack, yet it makes you like, it's all digital. It's all fake. There's nothing real about it. And yet it is so real, and it is so heartwarming, and it is so I guess, what's the word I'm looking for here? Nostalgia inspiring. And so I think that is just such an incredible feat that you're able to pull that off with props and trickery in the computer. So it was so cool to see.
Every time I see Grogu, I'm surprised by how cute he is. It's like I've seen him so many times now, and it never stops surprising me how cute they have made him. They've been so successful in that. And I adore when Luke and Grogu are walking along and Luke is using the Force to keep Grogu up.
Mhm.
It's the funniest little subtlety, and it's just so cute every time I see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is similar to what I just said, but the specifics of the design of it
Mhm.
is really special.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course, and then within that, you also get the little, oh, I'm gonna give you a little bit of PTSD with the Order 66 flashback.
I did forget
And that
about
was
that,
super
and
cool.
yeah, and I think that is one of the big question marks of this whole season of TV. Like, it just gives us like 5 seconds, but I'm gonna need to know more about what happened then.
Yes, and we never really talked about it, I don't think, on the podcast, but Ahsoka was framed by her friend Barriss Offee, who was another Jedi Padawan. She was framed during the Clone Wars, and she was tried and she was found guilty. And then eventually it was Anakin was able to clear her name, but she left the Jedi Order anyway. Barriss Offee's symbol is seen on the door, right? Like her like quarters, like it's the sort of thing that it's like, is this just Dave Filoni intentionally being a tool and being like, I'm gonna make this take place outside of Barriss's room so that people get distracted, because people have been really curious about what's Barriss's fate, and Barriss was this. People have assumed, and I think rightfully so, that she has the fate. She probably has become an inquisitor, but I think it's likely that she will. Her
It's like a
arc,
Death Eater, I guess.
a little bit, yeah, sort of in that kind of way, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it'll be very interesting to see how she returns. But it would be surprising if somebody of a dark side intent were the one who saved Grogu. That could kind of be interesting to see if Palpatine maybe had his hands on Grogu, and then actually, this is something that I forget where I heard it, but I heard somebody theorize it, and they said that it wouldn't be shocking if that was indeed the case, and that the Bad Batch was sent to rescue Grogu, and that he ends up and because the Bad Batch are pretty intertwined in the underworld at the moment, but they're with a good conscience and they're doing kind of extraction missions for people, and it just seems like a very fitting thing that you could be kind of the big inciting event of maybe season 2 of the Bad Batch is a Grogu rescue mission.
I like it. That's very cool. Well, I'm at number 1, and it's kind of something that you already hit on, although I'm going to look at it a little bit differently. You said the reunion of Din and Grogu. For me, the number 1 thing is Grogu specifically choosing the way. Strangely, I think that this is like the essential question of the Mandoverse. Is Grogu a Jedi or a Mandalorian? That they tackled it in like a B plot of someone else's show is always going to be the most baffling thing in the Book of Boba Fett. We talked about that a lot. But in terms of Grogu's story, I'm just happy that they did the crowd pleasing thing. Like we said before, they didn't make us wait. Not all of Star Wars has to be about whether or not your precious character chooses the thing that you don't want them to choose, because that's what's going on with Luke and Vader. It's what's going on with Rey and Kylo. It's certainly what's going on with Anakin and Palpatine. Not every Star Wars story has to be about your precious character choosing the thing that you don't want them to choose, even if the thing that you don't want them to choose is actually a good thing too, which in this case would be Luke Skywalker. They didn't belabor it. It's oddly satisfying. And also, like, specifically the chainmail that he's wearing, the chain, it's so cute, and that he like puts it on, and that Mando has gone out of his way to have him made his own, like, essentially Boba Fett gear is terrific. And so, yeah, the hug is good, but it's specifically what they've done for the story of how to reunite them that pleased me.
Yeah, it was really nice the way that they did it. Having Yoda's lightsaber there was cool.
Yeah.
And just overall, it made a lot of sense as to Luke giving Grogu the option and Grogu choosing to go back to Din. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And also, Grogu's still so young, and he will become a Jedi. Absolutely. There's no two ways about it. Grogu will become a Jedi because he will outlive Din by 900 years. Right. And so he can do whatever the hell he wants in those 900 years after his dad dies, because he can hang out with him. And
although you do have to learn the Jedi Order young, like traditionally, it's better to teach you when you're a baby.
there's going to be no Jedi Order of the same
True.
kind because, well, first
Luke
of all,
was
it's going to be all gone.
Yeah.
The only Jedi left will be Rey, and maybe Ahsoka or who knows, but it's going to be people who know that the old Jedi way was wrong. And someone like Grogu, who has the Darksaber and had been trained by Luke Skywalker and was part of the Jedi Temple. I don't know. I think he's probably got some clout as to saying like, yeah, I've decided to return to being a Jedi. Does anyone have a problem with that?
Yeah.
I've got the Darksaber, and Luke was my master.
Problem with that.
Anyway, otherwise, just like forever hold your peace.
Does it occur to you he's too small, even in his full-grown state, to wield the Darksaber, which is like the size of a hockey stick?
No, I need him to wield the Darksaber because that will be hilarious.
Yeah, it'd be good.
He'll have to use both hands, of course.
Yeah, your Claymore.
Or maybe to be honest, maybe the Darksaber will get broken, and then the Kyber crystal will be reused, and he'll make a new, smaller Darksaber. Sure. That is probably more likely.
Yeah, or they could just find like a way to not protract the blade as long or something. It is a light beam. Like
you are able to do that with lightsabers.
There you go.
Yeah, they do. That's some of the great little things about Rebels is you learn like a lot about how lightsaber construction works.
Okay, well, I don't have any idea what your number one is going to be. I think it is notable to say now that we have not talked about Tamora Morrison really at all.
I know
or Fennec Shand even once.
No, we haven't. No.
Or the bar or anything, but like I don't know. Lay it on me. What's your number one thing about the Book of Boba Fett?
Nothing to do with Fennec Shand or Boba Fett.
Okay.
my number one is actually the wisdom of Ahsoka, and that would be the fact that she is the one who ensures Din doesn't go and see Grogu. She is the one who is kind of guiding him through that process and is like, hey, how's it going? We've met before, but I'm going to be here to shepherd you on your fatherly journey and to learn a little bit about attachment. Let's have a little Star Wars lesson about attachment here, Din. Right. And it's just, she is sharing so much with him. And at the same time, then she's able to have the best conversation ever with Luke. It's brief and we need to hear more about their reunion, but the kind of subtleties that she's talking about with Anakin and about how he's like his father, and as they're talking about Grogu as they're watching him train and just hopping around, I thought Rosario Dawson killed it even more than the appearance in Mando season 2. I thought this was more Ahsoka than ever. I think she's been really watching lots of Clone Wars. The mannerisms are insane. It's
good. I'm glad to know that. That's cool.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen some stills of, in particular, the arm crossing. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, yes, it's the Ahsoka arm cross. It's the high, like she crosses her arms very high. And it's very noticeable. And they're like, it's something that it's cartoony the way she crosses her arms. And so the fact that no human would just do it in that exact, it's subtleties, and it's something that you can appreciate. And it shows that this is somebody who has learned so much over so much time. And she's a character with such story and such connection to the Skywalkers. And so to see her be able to reunite with R2 and to reunite with Luke and reunite with Din, it's just as kind of this shepherd of the Mandoverse and the Filoni-verse, and to a lot of Star Wars fans. So I thought it was some really excellent Ahsoka, and gets me so excited for that TV show. So
yeah, and in terms of her role in the Mandoverse, I just think it was really smart of them to reestablish her, just to remind the greater viewership, like, this person really matters. Like, don't forget about this character who, like, other than Luke, who you're not going to see that much more. This character is like the wisest Jedi in this timeline. And so if you want Jedi shit, like this person is a very critical character that you should probably bone up on.
Yeah, I mean, I would say easily the most wise Force user, definitely more wise than Luke, but not, I would say in terms of raw power, probably not as like
maybe
from a Skywalker bloodline. But I think that's also going to be maybe a bit of a problem. Is whatever takes her away is something that I think is going to be sorely missing for Luke. I think that is going to be maybe Ahsoka's greatest mistake, is the fact that she abandons Anakin's son the same way she abandons Anakin.
Well, maybe
So
she'll remedy that choice this time. Maybe she'll have learned. I guess we'll see.
well, I wonder is the fact that my point is that Luke's Jedi Academy crumbles, and so I wonder if we see an older Ahsoka being as like almost with Rey, but like really, really wise, like the way Yoda has failed so much, and so an Ahsoka who's failed on even another level, but at the same time accomplished so much, because I assume the Ahsoka show is going to be about bringing Ezra back, and I'm sure there's going to be many triumphs in defeating Thrawn and whatnot.
It would be cool to be able to draw a direct line between Rey and Anakin, which we can't even do with Luke because Luke didn't know Anakin, but we could do that through Ahsoka.
Luke did know Anakin like a little.
Oh, but not really. Like he knew Vader, and then Vader died 5 minutes after turning good. Like, I mean, like to know that the Jedi warrior who was like legendary and who trained Ahsoka and like had all this great promise, like Anakin Skywalker. Like the easier line to draw there is Ahsoka, and like maybe she will be a sage who can actually counsel an older Rey. That could be useful.
Yeah, I think that could be very cool, and it wouldn't surprise me if Ahsoka becomes some sort of Time Lord as well. So,
could she be present in Obi-Wan Kenobi? Is that out of the question?
That would she's probably in some form of. Well, no, because Obi-Wan's the one in hiding. She would be at this point. She would be part of the Rebel Alliance. That happens at the end of the Ahsoka book. So. She could. It's not incredibly outside the question. I think there's a higher chance that she appears in a flashback, but then they would have to recast her at a younger age. So maybe not. That wouldn't make a ton of sense to do that in live action.
Okay, some honorable mentions. Season 1, Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, some great stuff. Mock Shays was awesome. That's the mayor. The menacing nature, although it didn't have the same follow through that I was hoping for, but I thought it was through
for me, but the design of it was cool.
Yeah, and very cool execution with oh geez, I'm off on my words today. Rodriguez's voice. Tashi Station having Fixer and Cammy there, that was really cool, and having Boba do a bunch of badassery and just beating up the Nikto gang in there, that was really cool sequence.
You were the only one who really got the full effect of satisfaction from that, although them just saying Tashi Station was cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know, anybody who's seen the deleted scenes of A New Hope a lot would love that.
Okay.
Boba crafting his gaffy stick, that was pretty damn cool.
Sure. I mean, of all of the Tusken stuff, and we haven't talked about Tuskens at all in this episode either, there were some cool Tusken Raider things. And I guess the coolest thing was like the actual ceremony. Like, how about when he like took acid and like had a weird trip in the desert? That was like
and he got hugged by a tree. And
yeah, that was a really bizarre thing that happened in the season that like didn't really change him that much from what we could see, but it seemed so important at the time. I thought it was well filmed. Like, I thought it looked really good in terms of cinema, but I don't know that it had a great significance to the story.
I don't know. He became pretty different after that. Certainly, he got pretty passive.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. But we don't have like a huge foundation for him being brutal in live action. Not as Tamara Morrison. Not really.
Well, we do, but after this point, so it doesn't line up. You're right.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. The seismic charge blowing up the Sarlacc once and for all was awesome. That was like number 7 or 8. That one just missed the cut because that was really, really cool.
Well, you talked about the Sarlacc. I think that you can loop in the demise of the Sarlacc as part of, because it's just the cool fan service, and like, yeah, let's kill the son of a bitch. That's not going to hurt my feelings at all.
Din struggling to wield the Darksaber. That was pretty cool, just in terms of how much he sucked with it.
the whole I guess you could call it like a training montage on that platform in space was such a breath of fresh air for the series, and involving the 2 other Mandalorians was like, it was pretty cool. I like those. Yeah,
and that's what I was going to say is the next honorable mention is the return of the Armorer and then the duel with Paz Vizsla. Those were really awesome scenes, and the Armorer, everything she says is poetry, so that's always very cool.
That's very true. Yep.
The melting of the spear and the chainmail, of course. The Night of 1,000 Tears, seeing the flashback to that with the TIE bombers and the KX droids, that was very, very cool. I was happy to see that, or not happy, but you know what I mean. The BD series droid, the Peli had, that was awesome. It was great to see that in live action. Those are the cutest little droids around.
I'm really surprised they have used as much Amy Sedaris as they have in Star Wars over the last couple of years. But like I said, took me a little while, but I've actually warmed up to her quite a bit.
Completely in the same boat. I did take me a little while, but I'm liking her now. Return of Carson Teva, that was excellent. Happy to see him. We need more Paul Sun Lee in Star Wars. So Scorpionek droids, they were great. The line, is that a bench?
Oh, yes. Proceeds to lie down on it.
It was a bench.
Yeah. Is that all you got?
And the last ones would be the flying frogs when they're levitating all the frogs.
Cool. That was really cute. Considered that one. That was amazing.
Yeah, just kind of showing Grogu, look what you could do. You could levitate all the frogs. And then R2 tricking Din. I thought that was just funny. By taking him to Ahsoka instead of Luke.
Can we do the news in 5 minutes?
Yeah, in the news, there are kind of leaks and stuff coming out about Obi-Wan, and so I'm kind of avoiding them because there's not enough there that I want stuff spoiled. And I've seen some stuff that is like, oh, that's a little bit more plot than is a little leak. So I don't really want to talk too much about anything there. Okay. Just in the sense that when you have a show that's only 5 or 6 episodes and you find out what may be the plot of 3 of them, you don't want to share that.
How about John Williams, though? John Williams is going to finally score an Obi-Wan theme.
Yes, John Williams. So that is really encouraging. To the original Obi-Wan theme that John Williams created is the Force theme. So he created that, called the Obi-Wan theme, but it just makes a lot of sense to use that for all Jedi. And so it's good to finally get him back for this, the same way he did for Solo. I'm not sure if I think he's just doing the theme. So I don't think he's scoring the show.
Probably, yeah.
But that's kind of all that matters in being able to give it that Star Warsy flair that you're looking for. One bit of info that I will say about the show is that we will likely see the return of or there's potential for us to see the return of Vader's mentor who lurks in the shadows. Ian McDiarmid was talking about that it's not outside the question that he could be in this. Wow. So it wouldn't be a very big role, I imagine, but that would be great to see him return.
Not? I hadn't even really thought about it, but yeah, it does make perfect sense. I don't know why it didn't occur to me, considering like he just came back for Star Wars a couple of years ago. He's obviously into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that it's who's going to be sending him on whatever mission to find and kill Obi-Wan? Well, Palpatine will. And so if there's my guess is, just because we know Inquisitors are going to be involved, that Inquisitors will fail. Obi-Wan will kill 1 or 2 of them, and then one of them will come limping back, and then Vader will have to go and do the job or something. And there'll be some punishments issued down by Palpatine where he's pissed off at some people, and maybe do a little mental torture to Vader, and doing some maybe connecting the dots between events of episode 3 and future events of episode 6. Just some foreshadowing, because he's someone who sees all. I don't know. There's just so much potential you can do with Palpatine if you do him less dirty than you did him in Rise of Skywalker.
Well, and maybe one of those Inquisitors will be that Barriss person you were talking about. Like, there's an opportunity in this era to show us a little bit more of what Order 66 did, aside from just assassinate a bunch of people.
That's my pick for who Moses Ingram is, actually. Yeah. I think there's a chance Moses Ingram is Barriss Offee, because we believe she is an Inquisitor. We think it's Sung Kang is an Inquisitor, and Moses Ingram, and maybe somebody else, and maybe Rupert Friend. It's believed that all 3 of them are Inquisitors, and that Rupert Friend is the Grand Inquisitor, who was voiced by
so Lucius Malfoy.
The Grand. Who do you mean? Oh, Head Death Eater.
Death Eater. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great comparison. Yep, absolutely. But I think he was voiced by David Oyelowo, and so but Rupert
cool.
Friend is very on the nose, menacing. We've seen him as a bald guy before. Put in some spiky teeth, and you have the Grand Inquisitor. So that's pretty good.
Right on. Cool. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm very excited for that, and it's coming fast in May. Wow.
Yes, I know. It's just right around the corner. And so that's really all the things that are in the news. There's been some toys that were leaked, a Vader lightsaber and an Obi-Wan lightsaber toy. So it's Lego sets are coming out. That's where the things are going to be. Information is probably going to be revealed, but no, not much information, because what we've got coming right around the corner, everybody's waiting for a trailer, and that's the thing that we're missing.
Speaking of Star Wars Lego, like the early rub on this new game that's coming out, this new video game, is that it's amazing, that it's like completely open world, and that it is very expansive. Apparently this game is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The reason why I was just paused for a second there, Colin, is because when you said Lucius Malfoy, it got me thinking, oh my God, I got it backwards. David Oyelowo is Agent Callus in the show. And the reason why I was kind of thrown off there is because Jason Isaacs is actually the voice of the Grand Inquisitor. Yeah, he is. And that's the reason as to why I had to double check that, because I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. Is he actually? And I had to double check. And
That's
yes, it's
so
Jason Isaacs.
Weird. That almost feels like a meta casting too. Like, let's get Jason Isaacs. We already know he can do exactly this.
Yeah, and it's spot on. A lot of people actually used to fan cast him as Thrawn, and he would have been a good Thrawn as well before Lars Mikkelsen was a slam dunk. But yeah, sorry, back to the Skywalker video game, and it looks incredible.
Just the perfect amount of fun and silly, but also like maybe it'll be kind of like the essential Skywalker video game for the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much you can apparently do, and it's been delayed for so long that it doesn't seem like it was delayed for bad reasons. It's not getting bad rep for that. And so I guess the transparency has been good enough that people are pretty excited. And so I'm quite excited for it.
I don't have my birthday calendar, so I'll catch up on those next time. If you have a top 6 list, let us know your favorite things about the book of Boba Fett. Obviously, we've complained and kind of criticized a little bit, but yeah, by and large, we liked it. And so like, tell us the things you liked about it. They don't have to be specifically Boba Fett. You can email recorder66podcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at recorder66. As always, rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And if you're joining us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Until we are together again,
may the Force be with you.